everybody. Happy Monday and welcome back to the digital edition of NHL Now. Jack Redmond, E.J. Hradek. And for the first time, we've got a former head coach on the show. You are our first head coach, Bruce Boudreau, joining us during quarantine to talk some hockey. So thank you for doing this. We appreciate the time. How have you been making out the last few months?
You know what? Since February 14th, there hasn't been a lot going on in my life here. Because I think March 12th, the pandemic came, and then everything else shut down. So you're sort of locked in to your house. There's no hockey to watch, and you're just waiting for this thing to get over. You watch a lot of news, and you just try to dig up all the hockey stories that you can to keep busy.
You know, Bruce, I heard you over the weekend on an interview on the radio, and you talked about, like, during this break, you've been watching, like, old playoff games of your Capitals teams, of your Ducks teams, watching those games now that are, like, 5 to 10 years, in the past. What are you learning from watching them?
That we still do a lot of the same things. I think with those two teams, both the Caps and the Ducks, we were much bigger than the teams we had in Minnesota the first couple of years. So it was a change from physical, controlling the puck down low, to energy and getting in everybody's faces with using speed and pressuring the puck a little bit more than we did. But I was mostly looking at the defensive aspects of the game, and we had all the same criteria built in. So, I didn't think we changed that much. And I think defensively, for the most part, over those last 12 years, we've had some success.
Let me ask you this. We're coming up to, or hopefully we're going to see this return to play format come into play. It's an unprecedented time. Guys have been off their skates for what feels like forever, even though it's only been a few months. As a head coach, how would you approach this playoff format with your team? What would you do differently to sort of get them ready for something that none of them have ever really experienced before?
Well, it's a great question. I've thought about it an awful lot because, everything is going to be going at super speed motion once you get it going. I don't want to answer this the long way, but in the NHL, the regular season, usually you see a lot of sloppy play in the first 10 games. Players don't really want to, especially the veteran players, don't want to play in preseason games. They want to just build up into it. Now you're going 90 miles an hour. From the first day at camp, I've often thought, okay, what do? Do you go 100 miles an hour? Or do you still let them get in there, get their feet wet, and then go? Because it's just a 2-week span with one preseason game where everybody's got to play. So I've thought about it, and you got to ramp it up, really quick. And you've got to get almost where you were when the pause came, I think, into that mode with the players. Now it's much fewer players than in a training camp, but the practices have got to be up, not only upbeat, but I think they've got to be really a lot of competitiveness in the practices to make up for the non-competitiveness that you're not able to have through preseason games.
And also, one of the things that we're going to see, if we get there and if we get these games going, is these empty buildings, empty arenas. It'll be a different environment for the players, for the coaches. What do you make of that? These guys are pros, but still it will be a different feel.
It will be a different feel. It's going to be interesting. I'm guessing like everybody else. The feel of the crowd is important, but I think the feel of what's at stake is going to be more important. And I think the intensity from behind the bench to the players on the bench is going to offset the fact that there's no crowd. You're going to have to build your own adrenaline when you score a goal or you get behind. And it is probably a factor that we don't think about, is that if you're a player, you can hear probably right across the ice what you're yelling at to somebody else, where a lot of times that is muffled and you don't hear anything with the crowd noise. So if you're calling out one of your teammates on the ice, you might hear about it when you get back to the bench.
Yeah, and viewers at home might pick up some of this stuff too, just because there's not a lot of other noise. But I wanted to ask you about the top seeds and the sort of tournament style play that's going to be happening while the qualifying rounds are on. Do you think that's an advantage or a disadvantage? Because I got to think there's nothing like being on the verge of elimination in a 5-game series. I know they're playing for points percentage and seeding and all that, but how do you view that aspect of this playoff format?
Well, you know what? Like, I think, and I'll call that for this moment the second round. Okay. And they're having the round robin, and I don't think that the seeding is going to be important at all. Even though, like, in the regular season, Boston earned the President's Trophy and they earned the #1 seeding. But whoever they play in the first official round of the playoffs is going to be a good team. And so, I mean, whether you are in first place and you're Boston and you're the #1 seed, you may end up playing Pittsburgh. You know, you may end up playing a Columbus or a Toronto, which is still going to be a heck of a playoff series. Or if you're Tampa, you know, and you have to play Washington in the first round, things are going to be pretty wild and woolly. And I think for the fans, it's going to be fabulous because we're starving for hockey. We're starving for sports, and to see them playing for the ultimate prize and having almost everybody on your team healthy and not tired. Like, let's not forget, like, a lot of times you go into the playoffs healthy, but that's after an 8-month grind. This is fresh. So even the oldest guys are going to be fresh. So it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, you know, I'll follow that up quickly, Bruce, that the team that you were just coaching, you know, right near the pause, the Minnesota Wild, they have older players there. They have a goaltender that really struggled. This pause could set them up to have a good run.
It could. I mean, and if you look at the numbers, like, I mean, after Game 7 of the regular season, they're 15 games over 500. There's not a lot of teams 15 games over 500. They got 4 lines deep that they can throw out at you. If they get the goaltending, and I think it's going to be a tough decision who you start with that, because you got a short training camp. You probably have to go on who's best in the training camp type thing. In their situation. In other situations, it's pretty automatic. But I mean, because Alex was the goalie that they used down the stretch, but you got to give the respect to Dubnyk that he was the #1 goalie for so long. If he has a great training camp, do you start him? The difference is on a 3 out of 5, you got to be able to give a quick hook if that's not going right.
I love that this is a conversation we're having right now, and hopefully as the weeks go by, we get closer and closer to real hockey so that we can have full-on conversations about these details of the series and the game. But Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Oh, it's great. I love talking to you guys anytime.